then how do you translate it in the real world?
That is like a very difficult question. I don't know how to answer that. In many respects, the theoretical issues are so perplexing, not only theoretically but sort of morally or ethically, that it's very difficult to know how to live. I don't know if you also find that. I mean, I think it's quite difficult. I mean, the work that I'm doing on domestic labour at the moment is a case in point. So my new work on race job is trying to look in the context of domestic labour. And when you speak to employers of domestic workers, they all say how much they are helping. There's this whole narrative of, look how generous I am, look at the terrible conditions that she's in, the house burned down. There's all these tales of tragedy, and then there's this notion of but look at how we do, we built a house, or we paid for the school fees, or we sort of did this, and we gave clothes, and we did that. And at one level you can see this kind of paternalism as part of the exact problem. You wouldn't, if you paid someone a decent wage, you wouldn't need to do all this helping, and then, But on the other hand, does that mean you shouldn't help? So, or you shouldn't be generous, or you shouldn't dignify, or...
So it becomes a double-edged sword.
Well, how do you live in a world like this? In a world that is so riven with inequality that you're part of, and you're participating in, and you're benefiting from in some very indirect, or maybe even very direct way. How do you act? And I don't know if anyone is going to be able to answer your question and say, well, here's a theory, this is how I'm going to act. There's a simple way. The whole time, the struggles and contradictions of life, it's helping to inform how you're thinking about things. And so, it's a tough question that I can't answer properly.
And looking at the research projects that are currently involved with, and looking at what I've just said, so you read the theory, and then this is the real life. It's not a linear thing. It's not easy to connect the dots. But do you find pleasure in the projects that are currently involved in, like this? Not daily.
Yes.
When you leave your office and you...
It's lovely. I love doing that. So we're planning a new study. We're looking at intergroup contact. There's an informal settlement in Northdale. In winter time, believe it or not, the municipality came there, pulled up all the illegal electricity connections because the people in Northdale were complaining that it affected their electricity. They had lots of shorts, etc. And so there's a kind of intergroup situation there. The informal settlement is black, and the Northdale is historically Indian. So we've got this a kind of complex overlay of kind of race and class. One of the things that I've been interested in for a long time is the effects of intergroup contact, etc. So we're going to be looking at intergroup contact, the possibilities for solidarity between two historically oppressed groups. So it's an interesting, exciting project. Great to be able to do it once again, collaborating with colleagues at UKZN, plus John Dixon and Colin Trudeau, so old friends. Old friends coming together. It gives us a chance to work together, to visit each other, to continue those conversations that we have, and also to write influential pieces, hopefully. We can't tell, we've got an idea of the kinds of things that we want to, the kinds of papers we want to write. We can't tell exactly what it's going to be, but hopefully we can also have an impact or have a presence in social psychology.
That's what I was about to ask you. Are you planning to write academic pieces, or are you also planning to kind of influence policy by this kind of project that you're currently involved in?
So our primary thinking is academic. primary thinking is academic. I haven't been very good at translating academic work into policy and into other forms of writing. You started that blog where you read that piece. It hasn't really been very successful, but we started as our little group to try and write in other ways and try and do other kinds of things. That would be great. We've got some students and some other collaborators that are better at that, that are doing that. But the honest truth is that my work hasn't done that, and it's been a failure in that sense.
Yeah, Kev, one last thing that I want you to kind of briefly talk about is social psychology, cognitions, and experiments. And I thought about this when you showed me the secret lab.
Welcome to the lab. This is the psych lab.
Yes, and do you see the connection between social psychology as a discipline and cognitive psychology plus the experimental study? Have they always been?
Well, I haven't. My tradition, I've done surveys and qualitative work so far in my academic work. Social psychology is primarily an experimental discipline, so all the influential work in the discipline is experimental. There's a beauty to experiments, there's a simplicity to experiments, they have a power in answering questions in a very abstract way. Mick Billig, in his book on rhetoric, arguing and thinking, he suggests that experiments are very good examples. So experiments can be used like any other events in life, etc. They can enter into rhetoric. They're not sort of definitive answers everything, but they are instances where events happen under certain kinds of conditions, which you can use rhetorically to make certain kinds of points. I mean, these points can be policy-related points, they can be all academic points. So experiments have that value. The problem, I think, with experiments is that they have very often tended to treat human beings, the participants or the subjects of these experiments, not really human terms. So they put you in a certain situation and then you fill out a little questionnaire or something, and then you've got a snapshot of the effect of that situation on you. So it's a kind of very mechanistic model. We're setting up a lab at the moment, and we're developing some software that allows participants to interact with each other and to see how, for example, if you put people in a situation with different amounts of resources, you create inequality, how does interaction unfold? So we're interested in a kind of temporal process by which the kind of phenomena that we're interested in, let's say it's ethnocentrism or prejudice or bias or whatever, how does that, or inequality, how does that come about through a whole lot of people interacting with each other and making their own individual decisions, producing this kind of collective outcome. Now, for me, that is what social psychology is about. You can study it in the lab just as much as you can study it outside the lab.
So are you doing it in collaboration with students? Only social psychology students?
I was in Amsterdam recently and met with people in artificial intelligence, and there might be possibilities of applications in robotics, in collective robotics. So there's possibilities for really interesting applications, for interesting kind of work. So it's still in the early stages. We're writing. We've got an NRF grant to write some software to make this environment, to create this kind of this virtual environment in which interaction can take place. So hopefully, for all these kind of things, it's like fishing. You put your line in the water and then you see what happens.
And hopefully all this will be ethically approved. When you're looking at attitudes and...
Well, I mean, I don't see like huge ethical issues with putting people in a situation, asking them to sort of give and take.
It's not a pure experiment.
Well, you can. We do manipulate things. Like, for example, we put people in a situation where they're all individuals. Then we put people in a situation where they're members of groups. And does that affect how they interact with each other? Or some groups are more powerful than other groups. Does that affect? Or the process of ostracism. If we just don't give to one person, what, you know, how does that?
Yeah, I guess that's a bit about social psychology experiments. They're not that complicated when it comes to the ethics and all that.
Or if you take a look at the history of social psychology, Milgram, Zimbardo, I mean, there's been some pretty unethical. The history of our discipline is not great ethically.
As I was asking the question of ethics, so hopefully.
Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah. I think we've come to the end of our chat conversation.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for. I mean, I feel like a bit awkward being in front of a camera, and a bit awkward, sort of being selected, and you know. So yeah, but I wish you well with the project. And I mean, it's been great actually getting to know you. One thing that this has enabled us to do is to get to know each other a bit better.
Hopefully, instead of some time to
Okay. Cheers.
Sure.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so now. Okay, stop.